Steve, apparently in Mexico, aliens have visited and then they died.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people in Mexico found their remains and have claimed that these are real. But apparently there's a backstory to this, which is very interesting. So why don't you tell us like the whole story here?
Backstory is that none of that have happened.
No, wait, the aliens didn't come.
No aliens. So yeah, this is, this made a huge splash in the news recently. There's a lot of discussion going on social media about these two diminutive, allegedly alien mummified bodies that were presented by a journalist, Jose Mausenflota, to the Mexican Congress. Now, these remains, the story is that they were discovered in 2017 near the Nazca lines or Nazca mummies. And at the time, they were presented as, look, we discovered some alien bodies. The scientific community was not impressed. And now it's the same bodies are just resurfacing, 6 years later, and making another round, because they were somehow managed to convince the Mexican, Congress that they needed to see these bodies. So first we could talk about a few things like what's the provenance here. If we actually discovered alien bodies, that would be the story of history of all time, like the biggest news story of all time. It'd be the biggest scientific discovery of all time, like without any comparison. Certainly that's not the way it's playing out. This is not playing out as by the way, this is the biggest science news story of all time. And there's a reason for that. That's because it isn't. So we could talk first about Mausen, right? His history. So this guy's a journalist, not a scientist. He's a UFO enthusiast, apparently. And he has a history of backing or presenting alleged alien artifacts that turned out to be hoaxes. A few years ago, he was promoting the little like demon fairy. We talked about that on the SGU. It turned out to be a complete fabrication. It was part lizard, part sticks, and
now, do you think that this person like knows that these are hoaxes, or thinks is so gullible that they think all these things are true?
Don't know, and it's irrelevant. So but they're promoting these things. He is promoting these things. Whether or not he's involved in the actual construction of the hoaxes, I have no information on that. But so, he also claimed to have, contacted the Virgin of Guadalupe, so like other things, like just he's a fantasist. He has put out multiple fantastical stories, multiple debunked hoax alien, artifacts. So now, he somehow comes by these two mummified bodies, right? So what are the odds, right? That they would land in the hands of somebody who has had his fingerprints all over a bunch of alien hoaxes previously. As opposed to like an archaeologist finding them. That would be a little bit more of a credible backstory, than of a dubious UFO journalist.
I mean, have these artifacts been scientifically analyzed?
Yes. So there has been some scientific analysis. Back in 2017, DNA analysis was done on 2 samples taken from one of these bodies, from the hand and the brain, like what was inside the skull. We're going to show pictures of these aliens. So they look like very, very small humanoid beings. But clearly there's a lot of differences. They have only 3 fingers. Their ribs are, circumferential rather than, going only part way around. For example, they have elongated heads. But they tested the DNA. This was done by a company that does paleo DNA analysis. And they found that the DNA was 100% human. Right, that was the conclusion. This was human DNA.
Okay, so they found human DNA in the samples that the scientists took from these corpses?
Yes, from these mummies.
From the mummies.
Yeah.
All right, so does that mean that these aren't constructed, that these are actual mummies?
So it means both of those things. They're Nazca mummies. They are mummies of actual living human beings, probably young children, that were then later screwed with to make them seem alien. Right?
Okay.
Clip off a couple of fingers, and then you got a 3-fingered alien, right? For example. So that's why they're very, very humanoid. Sometimes when these alien mummies are constructed, animal bones are mixed in with human bones. And that may be the case here as well. Because again, the DNA analysis was only from 2 parts, of the mummy. But then we kind of don't hear about it anymore. Like they presented it in 2017. The DNA analysis was a bust. It was human DNA. Scientists like, this is fake. The carbon dating said dates to somewhere around 300 AD, between like 250 and 400 or so AD. So these are probably genuine artifacts, which raises an entire list of other questions. Like, okay, if these are actual mummies from 1600 years ago, 1700 years ago, how did they get them?
Yeah.
Or, how many crimes were committed, in obtaining?
Sure.
And then also they were taken out of Peru, which is against the law in and of itself. So there were probably genuine artifacts that were then modified to look alien, but they are human remains. And now there may be other things mixed in there. That's it. That's the story. That's what's actually happening here. They are mutilated remains of people, right? From 1700 years ago. And now they resurface and are being again presented by the same people as being aliens, but they don't have any more data over the last 6 years.
They literally just rebooted the original.
Yeah,
attempt.
I guess I don't know how much they've been shopping them around, since then. And they make all kinds of claims. Like they claim that we've had experts X-ray them and it looks like they look legitimate. I don't know what that means. And they're claiming they've had other people do DNA analysis and they're nothing from this earth. It's like, okay, well, can we see the actual data? But they haven't shown any of the actual data.
And who are they? Who did it?
So this is not how science is done. Genuine science needs to be transparent. Like the original DNA analysis was published. You can see the report. You can see what they found. They were able to, align sequences of DNA with human sequences. Now we're just being told that it doesn't match anything from the Earth.
Yeah.
And it creates more questions than it gives you answers. Like, for example, okay, so you're saying that the DNA doesn't match anything known, but it's DNA, but you have DNA from just the fact that there's DNA means that they're from Earth.
You'd think.
Right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to say, oh, well, I guess aliens have DNA too, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but it seems like they did make a claim, though, that they found something completely foreign.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
of course, let's say they did extract DNA. There's probably tons of contaminants. Like if I, chopped you up and looked at DNA, most of it would be bacteria. Like most of it would be non-J, right? So there's in any sample like that, there's going to be a ton of background DNA that's not from the specimen itself.
Yeah.
Tons of contaminating DNA. Most of the DNA you're always going to find is going to be bacterial because there's bacteria everywhere, and each bacterium has its own DNA, right?
Yeah.
So who knows what they did? They probably, have chopped up DNA sequences that they were unable to match because they're incompetent. That's probably the easiest explanation. Whereas an actual paleo DNA lab who knows what they're doing is like, this is human.
Every step of the way, they made fatal errors and
not errors. They're acting exactly. So again, I don't know how consciously they are hoaxing this, but they're acting exactly as if it's a hoax. This is what a hoax would look like. This comes out of nowhere. There's no provenance. Scientists are nowhere involved. The whole thing is dubious from beginning to end. Whenever you have legitimate scientists take a look at it, they're like, this is a hoax. This makes no sense. It looks like fake skin, like paper skin, glued on top of these bones, right? And it looks like the bones were messed with. And then you have it's being promoted by non-scientists with a history of promoting fake stuff, and then showing it to sort of experts who aren't really the right kind of experts to take a look at it, but are, have letters after their name so they could be, you could fool the public into thinking there's some legitimacy there, making really vague and claims that don't really add up and with no transparency. And whenever you do dig down to the actual evidence in cases like this, and we've taken a look at many alleged alien body cases, whenever you do get to the actual data, it always turns out to be nothing.
Yeah.
It turns out to be people, or like, that Bigfoot hair was, muskox, or it always turns out to be something mundane, like never something genuinely alien.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing here as well. So don't believe any of the hype that you may be encountering online, or any of the claims that Mousen or other proponents are making. They're not doing real science. This is a really shameful episode where they probably illegally obtained genuine Peruvian artifacts, illegally modified them, illegally removed them from the country. They are not doing any genuine science. It's all being showboated, for attention. And this is a hoax. That's what this is. This is all the fingerprints of a hoax. None of the features of a genuine scientific discovery. You shouldn't believe any of it.
Did the Mexican government really believe it for a little while, or?
I don't think so. I think it was met with, I think, a lot of skepticism, but there may have, oftentimes there's one true believer in there that makes it all happen. You know what I mean? But again, it's not like, so when this story first broke, I think a lot of people felt like the Mexican government is saying, hey, we have the bodies of aliens that we recovered. But that's not what happened. The government had nothing to do with this. It was the same UFO guys presenting the same old, already pre-debunked evidence, and just getting another round of social media attention about it. But it's really a disgraceful episode.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the saying is that, misinformation can go around the world once before the truth gets, the second shoe on, or whatever that saying is. The idea is, so much cleanup needs to be done after this one claim. And I'm sure anybody who's a critical thinker was like, what? Of course. But the fact is, a lot of people out there, Steve, and this, they'll hear that. They'll read the news item on social media. They'll read the headline.
And not do the follow-up.
But instantly believe it. It just goes right in, as if
or even if they don't necessarily instantly believe it, it gets filed away of, wasn't there something about, doesn't Mexico have alien bodies or something? Yeah. That idea gets out there in the cultural, background, and it stays there.
It fits in nicely with the UAP shenanigans that are going on,
which is why they probably chose now to showcase it.
Yeah, we got these things in the garage. Let's dust them off and see if they take root now. People are interested in UFOs again.
Right.
Yeah. And I'd put my chip down on it's all a money making scheme.
To some extent, whether it's to sell books or come to my lecture or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But again, the thing is that in and of itself, if you're making money incidentally by promoting something that you actually believe in, I don't hold that against you. You know what I mean? Right? If you publish a book or whatever, that that doesn't mean what you're saying is incorrect. But if that's all you're doing and there's no legitimacy to what you're doing, then obviously that puts a different light on it. So it is a good, even though this is a very superficially fake, I think, episode, it is a good opportunity to remind the public about how science actually operates. This is not how this would go down if this had any scientific legitimacy to it. But unfortunately, a lot of people have a very childish, cartoony image of science, that they get from the movies, from cinema, from TV, and they don't really have a good sense of how it actually functions, and it makes these kind of stories seem superficially plausible because they do feel like a movie, right? And sometimes to some people that feels more real than reality because that's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they see, you know.
So if this were real, let's say that alien bodies were found somewhere, mummified alien bodies. Quickly walk us through like what you think the order of events would look like if they were real.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on who found it, right? So chances are it would probably get picked up by somebody who is like an archaeologist, somebody, scientist, whether they were the person who found it or, because the thing is, the archaeologists, you got to remember, always have their eye on the market of people who find stuff and then sell it, because they'll buy evidence. They don't care. You know what I mean? They'll do that. Paleontologists will buy fossils. They'll keep people. If you're looking for meteorites and you're a scientist, you'll buy them off the market. Yeah. So even if they were found by a private citizen or a collector or somebody looking to like grave rob and sell antiquities, they probably would still find their way into the hands of a scientist. In this case, something like this would come to the attention of the authorities because countries like Peru have laws that restrict people from stealing antiquities, because the countries, those countries like Egypt, any country where there were Aztecs, etc., have a history of grave robbers just looting them of their cultural artifacts. So they have pretty strict laws in place, to discourage that sort of thing. So one way or the other, this would get into the hands of the authorities, right? Whether that's a scientist or the government. And then, the thing is, it wouldn't take too much time to figure out scientifically that there's something genuinely interesting going on here. The hoaxes get uncovered pretty quickly, because at the end of the day, they're all pretty childish, because, you can't fake an actual alien. Yeah. Right? You can't, how could you fake that really? All you could do is mock one up. Yeah. But you can't manufacture actual alien artifact. And
right, because we're talking about like if this were a real alien, there would be alien tissue there, Right. But whatever.
Biologically extraterrestrial tissue. Yeah,
which would be obvious.
No, I can't identify this DNA, but it's still DNA that looks just like the DNA of any other living creature on Earth. But then the ufologists say, well, maybe aliens have DNA. They even said, well, maybe they're people from outer space, okay, or maybe it's a hoax. So anyway, then you would start to get, it's possible that scientists may hold on to it for 2 or 3 years while they did deep analysis. And then there'd be the press release where they're like, we've had this in our possession for the last 3 years. We've been doing a series of scientific investigations, and now we're publishing our results. Yeah. So the world may learn about it from scientists doing a press release to reveal data that they're about to publish to the scientific community and to the world. Right. Right. That's a very likely scenario. Another likely scenario is that the information gets out first, or it doesn't land in the hands of scientists who are going to I'm going to get the Nobel Prize off of this, right? And then a number of scientists would be invited in to study it, and you would know about it ahead of time. Like you would see the process unfolding, like we're doing DNA analysis and carbon dating and X-ray, and we're going to do an MRI scan or whatever. You would see that happen. It would be like Ötzi. Remember Ötzi, the Iceman? It was discovered. It was kind of say, hey, look, we found this Iceman. And then there was years of research that slowly got published and put out there. And there was just this trickle of scientific information as we learned more and more about
until they had a body of knowledge.
This famous specimen. That's a very likely scenario too. It would become a famous specimen that gets authenticated, at least initially or preliminarily, and then there would be this trickle of scientific information as we learned more and more about it, and it would be a fantastic scientific story that would last for decades.
Yeah, and the world, if legitimate scientists, trusted scientists came out and said, we've tested this thing and we conclude it is not of Earth, right? Yeah. If that happened, then there would be, of course, this tidal wave of reaction around the globe.
It would have to be, repeated, by other scientists, and everyone would want to take a look at it. It's like we bring the moon rocks back from the moon, and then there's labs all over the world who want a little piece of it so they could do their analysis of it. it would be the same kind of thing. It would be extremely valuable scientific property. We could also compare it to things like Piltdown Man, where again, there was a discovery. It was kind of dubious. There was initial skepticism. There were people who never fully bought it. But, generally speaking, we didn't know a lot about human evolution at that point, and it kind of confirmed some of our early biases. So, it was partially accepted, but there was always like this little question mark next to it. But the thing is, the fossils were put away in a vault, and no one ever got access to them for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But slowly, like over those 20 years, the scientific evidence started going more and more against Piltdown Man.
Yeah.
It was like more and more of an outlier until science, just generally there was like, wait a minute, this can't be real. This is like increasingly an outlier. They pulled the bones out of the vault, drilled into them. It's like, yeah, this is fake.
Yeah.
And they revealed that it was fake. I don't think even that would happen today. I don't think you'd be able to get away with like putting them in a vault and like not letting any scientist ever actually look at the specimen. Again, you know what I mean? So we have so many techniques now for physically analyzing it. It would get through the ringer. It would go through the ringer.
Did Peru ever request?
They're looking into it.
Yeah,
they're looking into it. There was a violation here. It'd be interesting to see what it actually comes down, because these look like they are genuine ancient mummies.
Yeah. Then you can't. Yeah.
From the air. Yeah, it'd be like pulling a mummy out of Egypt and making it seem like an alien or a cryptid or something, and then showing it in New York. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, in today's world, I mean, we're seeing artifacts go back to the countries of origin.
Yeah, which they should. They belong. They belong to the people.
Yeah.
In the country of origin, absolutely, it's part of their cultural heritage. They really deserve to be the ones to showcase them, and etc.
All right. So far, there is no proof of alien life.
There is none. Everything that's been put forward so far has been a flop. Scientifically speaking, most of them are childish fakes. They don't even pass the smell test. And as soon as any serious scientist gets their hands on them, this story just collapses.
Yeah.
And so the same thing is happening with the Mexican, the Nazca mummy aliens. And they were already debunked in 2017. This is a retread.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Of a story that was knocked down 6 years ago. All this information is there. It's all out there. So it's not that hard to find. But the believers are getting another round of media attention out of it.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.